It's episode 244 of the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning in to this brand new edition of the podcast. I'm feeling good. If you couldn't tell, I feel somewhat human again today. I'm feeling, it's like those memes, I'm feeling this seasonal depression seeping out of my body as the sun comes out. You know, I don't mind living. You know, you hear me talk about living in Canada and this and that. I actually don't mind it at all. I mean, listen, I'm in a decent city, nice, safe neighborhood. The only thing I hate, though, is at minus 30, because for 3 months, you hate your life. I mean, it is pretty much unbearable in the winter. And I think, like, everybody who lives in a place like that, I know, like, all across the states, too, Chicago, Boston, places like that. I mean, you hate your life in a way for those couple months. But at the same time, there's a lot of benefits to it, especially in the summer and the warmer time, so it's cool. Now, before we jump into the show, this episode is brought to you by StockX, the #1 online destination for just about any designer brand you can think of. We're talking Chanel, we're talking Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Yeezy, the shoes, the clothes, anything you can possibly imagine that is designer is available on StockX. And I got to tell you guys, I've ordered from StockX. I can verify that they are legit. As you've seen, I've done product reviews of items from StockX, and these guys are no joke. They ship quickly. Everything is verified. Click the link in the description of this audio or video to shop at StockX, and we appreciate you guys for checking them out. I had a super weird night. Man, I got to tell you guys, I got to be honest. I decided to go down the rabbit hole, and I just looked up a list, I think, online of like the top 100 movies ever. I had a realization. I said, I have not seen any movies. Like, if I was to actually sit down and write a list of the movies that I've sat down and watched since I was a kid, like not movies that were put on for me in front of the TV that I had no say over, movies that I actually sat down and said, I'm going to watch this, it's probably at most 25, if I'm going to be realistic, at absolute most 30. The only 2 series I ever got hooked on was Sopranos and Breaking Bad. Anybody who's ever listened to this show knows that, but I've never been the movie guy. And anytime I've ever watched a great movie, I really enjoyed it. So I looked it up, and I came across A Clockwork Orange. Now, I'd never heard of this, had no clue what it was about, but I obviously have seen The Shining, because, I mean, that's one that even if you're starting to watch movies, that's probably one of the first 5 that you're going to watch. So I was familiar with Kubrick through that, and I put this movie on just completely in the dark, in the blind, and oh my God, the only thing I can really say is it's an assault on the senses, man. I was so confused by this movie, so dark. I mean, Stanley Kubrick, I think he was a very, very strange man. I mean, Stanley Kubrick is the type of dude that I don't think is like you and I. From what I understand, a lot of the stuff that's in his films, throughout his films, he's very open about the fact that it's what he likes, it's what he appreciates, it's what he has an affinity for. And a lot of the sick shit that pops up in a lot of his movies, I don't know, it could be a coincidence, but it's just a little creepy. To go to that place, and I know it's based off a book, but to be really going to that place and setting it up and to make it that realistic and the stuff he did with the actors, you got to be on a different mental plane. I mean, this is the dude who turned down the Beatles. And I don't know, maybe this is a commonly known fact. I never went super deep into the Beatles lore. I try to just enjoy the music. A lot of people don't know that Stanley Kubrick turned down the Beatles for a movie. They came to him in the 60s and asked him to direct a live-action version of Lord of the Rings starring the 4 Beatles, to which he said no. Now, to say no to the Beatles ever in any era is pretty much insane. But to say no to the Beatles back then, that's pretty much unheard of. So this dude, again, completely on a different mental plane, I think, from other people. And there's just guys like that out there that are just, they operate differently, you know, and he was one of them. But, a super dark and disturbing movie, man. And the thing about it, if you're not familiar, the main theme is pretty much about losing your ability to make choice. And basically Big Brother government essentially taking the ability of choice and protecting you from yourself. And it was so sort of unfortunate that a movie made in 1971 that was this was a fantasy, sort of sci-fi fantasy fiction movie. The idea that the world could be so crazy to the point where people would be running through the streets violent and the government would be taking away your ability to make choices. This was something out of a sci-fi fantasy fiction film back in 1971. 2022, this is real life to a degree, my friends. And again, you can interpret that however you want. You can interpret that by picturing reality today, or you can interpret that by thinking about a dude wearing a long nose, talking about singing in the rain. I'm not saying that he's walking through the street. You got to think outside the box a bit with what I'm saying. But I know you guys get what I'm saying. And it's just, it was, I don't know, it was a cathartic in a way, because it sort of helped me realize a little bit into context that, like, wow, we've really, really come a long way from where we started as a civilization, as a society, I think is a better way to put it. And just in terms of the way of the world, you know, it doesn't take long. And you even look at the 90s compared to, you know, 2002, 2003, the post 9/11 stuff. It doesn't take long for everything to just completely go in a split second. So it was really weird for me to watch this movie from so long ago, from today. And I think the next movie I'm going to watch is going to be something more uplifting, but because that was fucked up. Like, that was messed up. If you guys haven't seen it, I think I'm downplaying how insane it was. But we're going to jump into Jim Florentine. Awesome guest, man. Super cool guy. I got to be honest. He's been on my bucket list for a long time. I've actually, all the dudes from That Metal Show, when I was a kid, I was like, I want to interview those guys. Boom. We got all the dudes from That Metal Show. We've had Eddie, Don, and now Jim. And this was a really, really cool chat, man. He's an interesting cat, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Appreciate you taking the time, dude. Big fan over here out in Canada since That Metal Show, so it's really cool to chat with you.
Look, I like that young people are into metal. I don't know, how'd you get into metal?
Man, I was one of those weird cases where, like, my parents raised me up into it young. But yeah, I was always that dude at the metal show that people are like, you're into this? It's sad that it's rare nowadays, I think.
It is, especially, you know, because the younger generation, really, where they're hearing it. Every video that they watch on YouTube is, you know, there's hip hop and rap attached to the music and stuff like that. You wouldn't even know unless you, like you said, you have parents that can turn you on to that stuff and you still like it. And then also, what girl, I don't know how old you are, but what girl your age knows anything about Judas Priest? Zero.
Dude, it's a challenge. I mean, the Iron Maiden and Metallica posters definitely held me back, I think, in high school. It's just one of those weird things. I mean, you're a parent, right? I mean, what about your kids? Are they into metal at all, or?
Yeah, my 11-year-old. Yeah, he's been to like 17 shows. He likes, like, you know, he watched all like hip hop videos and shit like that. That's fine, but he knows his metal, which is good. He had no choice. I just, you know, from day one when he was in that car seat, I would drill in AC/DC and stuff. So that's the only music he heard. That's
the thing. It's probably hard to avoid, but I mean, you made an effort to sort of bring them into it and make them at least aware of it.
Yeah. And he loves it too. You know, he gets, so, you know, he's starting to slip a little because he knows all these hip hop songs. Because he watches, you know, every kid watches like little videos, YouTube videos that got, you know, a bunch of teenagers messing with each other.
Yeah.
And stuff. And it's always attached to like Drake is playing or some shit like that. So.
And Travis Scott jumped in the Fortnite. I mean, see, I don't even play Fortnite. I feel like I'm totally out of touch with what's going on, but it's hard to avoid, you know. I mean, who do you think is maybe the greatest group in recent times for rock? Because, like, for me, guys like the Black Keys, Kings of Leon, I think they sort of helped carry the flag to a degree.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Foo Fighters really aren't metal, but yeah, I consider them hard rock.
For sure.
You know, and they're doing stadiums and stuff like that. So they've been the band for a while. You know, it's the older bands are dying off. So it's like, you know, when these bands aren't around anymore, who knows if AC/DC will do anything ever again.
It's true.
Still got Maiden, you know, Metallica. They still got some years. You know, Metallica still probably got about 7-8 years.
Yeah.
Maiden probably got about 4 or 5. But Ozzy's, you know, probably done. Scorpions are on their last leg. Priest is, maybe one more tour after this, but then so I don't know who's going to fill that void.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I actually saw Bruce Dickinson do a one-man show about 2 nights ago here. And it was pretty cool to just hear the power of his voice. I mean, you mentioned Maiden, like, I think they may be one of the groups that stood the test of time, possibly the best from their era.
Yeah, I mean, people around, they sell like, stadiums out around the world, which is amazing, and people like Iron Maiden. So no, they've been, and they're always doing different set lists, which is cool. So no, they're always fun to go see.
So with you, of course, the new special is Bite the Bullet, which is tremendously funny, by the way. I mean, I'm obviously people, they fuck around. They just say it because you're here and stuff. I'm saying it because it's true. I mean, I was watching it. It was such a breath of fresh air. And talk to me about your approach with this, because you put this out as a self-release independently, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the comics are doing that now. They put it up free on their YouTube page. It gets more people to see it because everybody's on their phone constantly, and it's a stand-up comedy special. So you don't really need to see it on a big screen. It's just a guy up there telling jokes. People could donate if they want, because you put it up for free, or just that people see it and then they come to the comedy clubs and see it. So that's the way I wanted to do it. We want to really get it out there. Before putting it on Amazon Prime, you could, but then people have to rent it or buy it and go seek it out. It's a lot easier for people to find right on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, was this the first one that you released this way, or was this something that you've tried before?
No, this is the first one this way. A lot of comics have been doing it lately, and it seems to be working.
Yeah.
If you can't get a deal with Netflix or HBO, which, there's not too many deals out there. So if you don't, you just go this route.
Yeah. Does it seem to make a difference though? Because I mean, it seems like, it's nice to maybe have the Netflix label, but people if they're going to watch it, they're going to seek you out sort of regardless.
Yeah. Look, Netflix is obviously a bigger, everyone has Netflix, and, it'd be nicer to be on there. More people would see it on Netflix because, it's worldwide and stuff. But if you can't get that deal, which most people can't, you just do it on your own. I've always done everything pretty much on my own in the business. So
how long have you been doing this exactly? I mean, at what point did Jim Florentine say, okay, I think I want to try this stand-up stuff? Was it always ingrained in you?
Well, I always wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be a musician. All my friends were in like local bands. I just didn't have an ear for music. I was a lefty, so nobody could teach me the guitar because they were all righties.
Right.
And I couldn't play with my right hand. And I just didn't have an ear for music, but I was always wanted to be around it. So I was DJing in rock clubs and on the radio and stuff. And then when I realized that I didn't want to work for the man, especially like I was on like a regular radio station, I had to just get the time and the weather every 15 minutes and that's it. And then I was always a fan of stand-up. Once I went on stage one night at open mic night, I got the guts to go up there and do it. I'm like, this is what I want to do. Never really look back.
And you were like in your 20s at this time?
Yeah. About 20. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, but it was like, I wanted to be on the DJ on the radio, not like a Howard Stern, but, crack a few jokes, but not, but I got to the point where I got to play the same songs and I can't pick the songs or any of that stuff. I go, this isn't for me. So I was like, I got to get out of this and figure out something where I can be my own boss.
Yeah. What is it about the radio program directors that they don't seem to want to play what a lot of people want to hear? Because, I mean, a lot of these rock fans who listen to these stations, they are familiar with the deep cuts and they would love to hear that.
Yeah, well, because they just like to play it safe.
Yeah.
So if they can
War
put
Pigs,
Tom Petty
Black Dog.
Right, Tom Petty, Free Fall, and everyone knows that song. But meanwhile, people are sick of it. It's like, oh my God, this over and over again. It's like, that's why everybody's, got away from regular radio in droves when there was other options. Before you had no choice.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you're going in, and so radio was always part of it for you. Who was the first big connection that you really made once you started getting out there in like the world of comedy and radio?
Who was it? I'm trying to think. It's my first TV appearance was on MTV. They used to have a comedy hour on there. And okay. Don Jamieson, who was part of that metal show, was working for MTV as a producer at the time. He wasn't even doing stand-up. And that's how I met him. We met at a comedy party one night. But I would never forget, my friend introduced me to this guy, Rich Francesi. He was on all the MTV shows, and he knew Don. And we were friends, and we were at a holiday party. He goes, He goes, hey, Don, I think you're going to like this guy. He's from New Jersey. He likes heavy metal and strippers. And
Perfect
Don's
match.
like, really? Yeah, because Don was from Jersey and he was a metalhead and he had long hair and he likes, of course, everybody likes strip clubs.
Exactly.
And we just started sitting there talking for like 2 hours. And he's like, I'm going to, I want to come see you do stand up, for this guy booked this comedy show. And that's how and he booked me on there. That's how we became friends. But that was my first big break, basically, from that, just that connection of, heavy metal strippers and from New Jersey.
Do you feel like more people join the business, and because it seems like a lot of people start in one role and they end up in like a very different role? Do you think that that's more so common than people who just say, okay, I want to be an actor, and they end up an actor, for example?
Yeah, I think, look, a comedian's always a stepping stone, the movies, TV, whatever you want to do. You always want to get to that next level, be like a Jim Carrey where you're making $20 million a movie, or an Eddie Murphy. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but I always just, you try it, but I always like doing stand-up because the freedom of being your own boss, saying what you want, wearing what you want is amazing, where no one's going to tell you what to do. So I always went back on that. You do some TV, you do some film stuff, you're reading basically somebody's other words that they're writing on a piece of paper, you memorize them, whatever, like that stuff, and the TV stuff, but nothing like the stand-up, going to a club and doing it.
Does it still feel that free now? Because we hear so much about, all the typical topics, the cancel culture, the this and the that. And by the way, I really like the way that you tackled some of this stuff in your special, because, like you're joking about it, but it wasn't heavy handed. But does it feel as free? Like I can go up and be my own boss nowadays?
Yeah, because the people that are offended, which is maybe like 2% of the population, social media just drives that stuff. Like everyone's really offended by somebody saying something. They're not coming to the comedy clubs. The
True.
people that come to comedy clubs understand their jokes. If you're going to talk about something edgy and don't really, take offense to it. So those people would never come to a comedy club. So as a comic, you're not worried about them. They're not coming in, stopping the show, yelling at you halfway through for saying a word or whatever. Those people don't come, which is good. So it's better that they stay home.
Do you feel like it's calming down a bit? Because it seems to me like so many people have realized that this stuff is over the top, that maybe it might start to die down. I'm not sure. No,
I don't think it'll die down. I still think people are going to pretend that they're offended and they'll try to take down anybody,
It still works for attention.
What's that?
It definitely gets attention. So, I maybe that will definitely keep driving it.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, as long as you're not going to host the Oscars or something like that, because they're going to go into your past. They're going to dig something out and say, can you believe this person said that? If that's not your main goal, then you have really got nothing to worry about. It's like, what are they going to take from you? Comedy clubs don't care. They're not going to call a comedy club, go, how could you put that guy on stage because he said, the word tranny or something, right? Like that, whatever. He's a comic. So as long as you're not trying to fit in the mainstream, you're fine.
That's a good point. Did you hear about the new podcast that just got taken down off YouTube, the Trump podcast?
I heard, right? These two guys do it or something. And
yeah, young guys from Canada.
I saw like a clip a couple of weeks ago. I didn't know. They're really popular, I guess, right? So why did they take it down from YouTube? Because they had him on as a guest?
Yeah, I think it's just a case of like, you're basically not allowed to give Trump a platform on the internet, no matter what he says, which seems sort of insane to me. Like I can understand if he's like, go kill this guy or whatever, but he didn't. I don't understand.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. What are you going to do? They won't take down anything else. But yeah, I know it's crazy. But that's what if you're going to work for. But there's other options now. There's different platforms now besides YouTube that everyone's going to, and now people are bitching about that. They're like, wait a minute, they're allowed to speak their mind over there. That's not fair. We have to shut that down.
Jesus. Do you think they'll work though? Do you think any of these new apps will get legs? Because I know there's a bunch now.
I don't know, because they still got to go through the Apple store, I think, right? And all this other stuff, and they could still censor that stuff.
Yeah. Oh man, I guess
I know there's got to be somewhere where a platform where they cannot mess with it, because then they'll go to the credit card companies. Say don't let the transactions go through. There's a million different ways they can bring the shit down, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's what happened here. In Canada, I think people who donated to the trucker convoys, they got their accounts frozen, which was unheard of,
Oh yeah, that whole thing going down to Canada, which is unbelievable.
It's been nuts. I mean, I don't know if you're New York area. I mean, what's it
New
like over
Jersey,
there?
yeah.
Jersey?
I mean, it's yeah. I mean, where it's not great, but it's doable.
Yeah.
It's not nearly what Canada's been going through.
It's been weird here, man. It's been like it's been like weird to go outside. You walk around and everybody's looking at each other like they're enemies. Like it's very polarized, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean,
Very
it's
odd.
like, you gotta go out and live your life. I mean, you gotta go out and live your lives. You can't stay inside forever and away from each other because eventually you're going to get it. China and Hong Kong are getting hit hard now with this Omicron because they had basically kept people inside for 2 years. If they had two
Right.
cases, they'd lock everything down for 10 days where you couldn't leave your apartment. You got to spread these germs. That's the way it's going to, that's why America's doing okay with it right now because we got hit hard in like November, December, January, part of February. Everybody got it and they moved on. When you're not around any germs, like in Canada, everybody's away from each other. Eventually, when you guys start in the summertime, if they start opening things back up, that's when it's going to start spreading because you guys don't have any immune defense against it.
I've worried about that, you know, like you keep people away from each other for so long and then when everybody's out, what's going to happen, you know?
You see so many cases, people like, I did everything. I got 3 shots. I got the booster. I was careful. I went out to dinner one time with a bunch of people. I got it. Yeah, because you're not around germs. I know when I put my kid in like preschool, he wasn't around any kids till he was like 3.5. So
Wow.
he wasn't really getting sick. But as soon as I put him in preschool, for a year straight, he was sick every week. And
Hmm.
then he got over it. He got around germs, and then he started being immune to stuff. But he needed to be around these kids that are
Right.
always carrying colds and all that shit. And right when he first started, he was sick all constantly.
No, it makes sense though, because you know he's getting out there. I mean, so going back a little bit to you know we were talking about you meeting Don and all that. At what point did the Crank Yankers come in for you?
Yeah, that came in a few years later. I put a CD out of a mess with telemarketers. When telemarketers call my house, I tape record them and torture them. And I just put it. I didn't even put it on a label. I just made a CD up myself, and then Howard Stern started playing it. And once he started playing it, they heard my stuff on there, Jimmy Kimmel and Carolla, because that was their show, Crank Yankers, because they would listen to Howard Stern, like, who is this guy to make these calls? We have this new prank call show. We wanted
Right.
to be part of it. So that's how I got the gig. You basically had to just mess around on the phone and putting it in. I was just showing them after my shows, trying to get my name out there somehow. And, it led to the Crank Yankers thing, which was great.
Man, so I mean, what was it like working with Jimmy and Adam at the time? Because you know, such a collaborative team, especially in that era.
They were great. I mean, because the Man Show was still on at that point, and it was
Yeah.
real popular on Comedy Central. So they gave him 6 episodes to do this prank call show and recreate them with puppets. And they were awesome, man. We fly to Vegas to go record phone calls because in that state, Nevada is a one-party state. As long as one person on the phone knows they're being recorded. A lot of states it's
Oh,
illegal to record somebody without them knowing.
right.
So we'd go to Vegas, stay in a friggin', the Bellagio, and just go in a recording studio every day and make phone calls. It was phenomenal.
That's badass.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, you know, Kimmel gets a lot of heat nowadays for his show. And, you know, a lot of people sort of pointing the finger. And I think it's unavoidable when you get really big. But just curious, what are your thoughts on that? Because some people say, oh, he's just saying talking points from the writer's room and he's not genuine anymore.
I don't know. Look, Jimmy made my career. He helped make my career. I just saw him like a year and Crank Yankers is back on the air after like 13 years. So I saw him at the premiere, like right before the lockdown and stuff. I was on his show a bunch of times. I never care about people's politics.
That's a good point.
I'm a big Ted Nugent fan, and I love Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. And those guys are completely opposite. And they're friends. They're also friends, and they talk about the issues and stuff. So it doesn't bother me. Whatever he does now, that's what he does. So I got no problem with it. He's been nice to me to help my career out big time. So
No, I respect that. And I think there's something to be said about that. At the end of the day, he has a job to do. He does it phenomenally well. And he's not writing
right.
it either.
And then look, him and Adam are still friends, and Adam's they're on different sides of the spectrum politically too.
No,
And they
that's a
can
great
realize,
point.
all right, so what? Who cares? I have most of the comedians are liberal, and I hang out with them all the time. I'm not going to be like, oh man, I don't like your views, or a conservative. I don't like you. I don't care. Really doesn't make a difference to me.
I think people should hang on to that though, because it's like that was always how it was, you know, I think 5, 10 years ago. And it seems to just be
Yeah.
dissolving, you know?
Yeah. Well, when Trump came into office here in the States, that's when it sent people fucking crazy because he reminded them, the women that he's just, he's kind of like a dick. And it reminds them of some dick that in college or high school that bullshit them, got in their pants, and then never called them back, said what he had to say. And that's like Trump, and that bothers them. And then the nerdy guys here, that Trump would walk in a room and steal their girl because they were a nerd and they were just friends. So that guy brought back all this bad shit, and people went crazy.
A reflection of insecurities.
Yes, exactly. Like this is what happened to me in high school. It's like, yeah, I got turned down by 10 different girls in high school. They broke my heart, but I'm not going to hold it against every woman the rest of their lives. Oh yeah, another one's going to break my heart. Like, get over it. You don't know what the fuck you're doing.
That's a good point. What do you think of Biden lately? Because I mean, I'm sort of watching. I'm not exactly sure what to think at this point.
I don't put on any news. You'll see it if you're online or whatever. I'll see little things here and there, but I basically look at it like it's like pro wrestling. None of it's real. No one goes to jail if they do anything shady. It's okay. All these people have been in business, been in Washington for years. The Republicans really don't hate the Democrats, the senators and shit. They all go out to dinner at the end of the night. They could trash each other on TV. It's like wrestling, and then they go out. Yeah, let's go get some drinks. Let's go get a steak, and they all hang out.
Good show today.
And it riles all of us up today. Riles all us up. Meanwhile, it's all bullshit. Nothing ever happens.
I couldn't have said it better
anyone
myself.
that might do something illegal, you're not supposed to do that. Everybody covers up for everybody. So I try to keep that shit off my radar as much as possible.
I think that's a great tactic for sure. You mentioned Kimmel and obviously a guy who was instrumental in your career. Of course, mentioning Howard Stern as well. Is that a guy who you're sort of friendly with on a personal level, or was that more so a working thing with you and Howard?
No, we were friendly. We didn't hang out. I hung out with him actually a couple times. Look, that guy gave me a launch. That guy launched my career. When his show was the show, especially when it was on regular radio, he probably had like 20 million people listening between all the different markets he was in. He was huge at the time. I got on the show. He took a liking to me. He had me on all the time. And eventually at some point, like people bitch that they used to be on the show and they're not anymore. It's like he knows. He goes, hey, I'm going to give you a little window. You make what you can I'm going to give you the exposure on the show. And then I'm going to move on. I'm going to find different people to bring on. Yeah. And that's, if you look at it that way, it's fine. And I was on there in the prime, the show in its prime and stuff like that. And, I got a lot of stuff from it, the Crank Yankers, and pretty much everything in my career I almost got from being on the Howard Stern show. So, wow. But at some point it's like, okay, now I'm going to let you go. It's almost like a parent if the kid gets out of college. All right, you're on your own now. I help you.
Well, it really is what you make of it.
What's that?
It really is what you make of it after that opportunity.
It's exactly what you make of it. And while you're on that show, the connections you can make and everything else and get that exposure, but you still got to, do what are you going to do? You're going to rely on him the rest of your career? It's like, no, let him go help some other people, which is fine. And that's what I always did it for. I'm like, okay, there's going to be a time where, I probably won't be on the show, and it's fine. It's no big deal. And I'm still all friends with all those people over there and everything. The show's changed. It's all like, he has a lot of A-listers on.
Yeah. It's a different show.
If he has a choice between me or, Matthew McConaughey, who the hell is he going to have on? I'm going to be at the Funny Bone in Indiana. That's what I'm plugging. He's plugging a blockbuster movie. So I get it.
No, I hear you though, because it really is a different show. For me, it's not as much of a comedy show now, like you're saying, it's more of an interview show. And I personally think like the serious stuff he's doing now will be a great sort of end to his legacy. Because he's retiring soon, right?
He just signed a 5-year contract. So,
ooh, man, my man is a workhorse.
He's been saying he's been retiring since the 90s. It's like, yeah. So I don't know. I'd say he's got at least 3 or 4 more years with this contract. So, I think he's 68 years old now or 67. So,
wow. So legendary. Did you meet Artie Lang through Howard, or did you know Artie before the show?
No, I met him through Howard. he started comedy later than me. Then he only did it for like a year or two in New Jersey, in New York area before he moved to LA when he got on Mad TV.
Right.
And he was out there for most of the time. So once he started, going on the Stern Show at the same time I started going on, that's when we became friends.
Artie, just such a lovable guy. It's so, I've never seen a dude who, like, people don't know him, but they feel like they know him so well. I mean, is he very much authentic to what people hear on the air?
Absolutely. He's an open book on the air, and everyone knows he's got faults and problems, and everyone can relate to it. He's like the everyday man. He's got a gambling problem. He's having a women problem, whatever it is. And everyone's like, oh, man, I know that. Yeah, I went to Vegas. I got ripped off, too, whatever it is. So that's why people loved him. He's a blue-collar dude, worked on the docks, played softball and shit like that. No, and he's a great guy, too. He really is. Helps a lot of comics out. Helped me out big time, too. Took me on tour. I'm opening for him in these theaters. We did Carnegie Hall together in New York. And and then I build my fan base on opening for him. It's the same thing with the Stern Show. It's like, all right, so now I'm performing in front of 3,000 people. Artie's fans, maybe they'll like me, and then they'll come see me on my own.
Have you spoken to Artie lately? And I mean, is he doing okay?
I did his podcast. He was doing a podcast for a little while. He started back up probably 6 months ago. He shut it down recently. I just talked to him on the podcast. He said he's doing good. He's just laying low. I know he had some probation, he's on some strict probation. So he's sober, which is good.
Yeah, 100%.
But he's laying low, and I'm sure he'll pop up at some point again and start getting back out there.
It would be really nice to see that for sure. Real quick, yeah. I just wanted to know, we mentioned like all these farewell tours that are going on, and these groups sort of on their last legs. How do you feel about this? Because groups like Motley Crue, for example, the never-ending farewell tour. I mean, at a certain point, is this a ripoff or is this genuine?
Yeah, look, Lynyrd Skynyrd, like 7 years ago, was their last show, and I saw two of them on their last tour, and they're still going. Judas Priest, we're retiring. The Scorpions, they're doing a whole residency in Las Vegas. We're retiring. Even Slayer's like, I know that, like, Slayer's even like, why did we retire? Yeah, it was fun. This is the last tour, but we're still young. We're still in our mid-50s. We could still do this. So, look, that when they realize how much money's out there, how much money's on the table, that, and they're like, why not go out there and play the greatest hits? And, I knew the Motley Crue thing wasn't going to stick. It was at some point where, they're going to get back together. All the bands always do. There's just too much money on the table, and there's demand to see that. Yeah. People pay top dollar. Remember those songs from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s.
I think Slayer retired at the perfect time, because I'd much rather see a group that's that iconic retire when they can look back and say, boy, we ended on top, rather than have them, slowly disintegrate on the stage. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. But when in 2 years if a promoter puts, 50 million guaranteed to do, 100 dates, they go, man, we got to go do it. Look at this 50 million. Why not? Exactly. So I don't know. We'll see. That's always a thing that lures you back in. A sports, guy that plays sports can, once he retires, he's done. He can't come back 5 years later. He knows it's over.
Except for Tom Brady.
Yeah, I know.
Which is a little nuts.
Yeah.
No, it's true, though. It's easy to say as a fan, I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't do it. But when that money's in front of you, it's a totally different story.
Right. And then when the band's like, well, why not go out? If people really want to see us and there's such a demand, why not go back out and play for them? So I understand where they're coming from, too. But I don't know. To me, like, the last tour doesn't mean I got to go see them, because I know that it's not going to be the last tour.
You're like, we got 3 tours left. So,
yeah. All of a sudden, it's funny how on the farewell tour, they realize that they're packing arenas and like, well, why are we going away? We can still make a lot of money. So they go, we're going to continue. That's what Judas Priest did. That's what Scorpions did. They're like, we realize that people still want to see us and we still love doing this. Of course you do.
Very Spinal Tap-ish, to say the least.
Yeah. Kiss has been on this last tour for the last 4 years. I think they still got 2 more years left.
It's insane, man. See, that's a group for me that's tough, because like you talk about, Kimmel, like Kiss is my Kimmel. Like, they gave me a chance to interview them when I was 10 years old, and they basically, anything I've ever done from there is because of Kiss. But it is hard to watch, man, because it's different with them, because they have the armor. Like, it's so much more physically taxing,
Yeah.
It's a challenge. But I mean, at the end of the day, I see it like they've earned the right to go do that, because they created some of the greatest records in rock and roll history.
I got no problem with any band going out there, even if they say they're going to retire and coming back. As long as there's a demand for it, why not? If people want to go see it, if there's one original member left and that's it, if they still want to go see it, then who cares?
Exactly.
They'll know when they have to say no, we're not going to go back anymore, when no one's showing up. So they have every right to go out there and make some money and tour. So I got no problem with it.
I completely agree. The brand new special, Bite the Bullet, is on YouTube. Jim Florentine, thanks so much for your time, man. It's been awesome chatting with you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I want to thank Jim Florentine for taking the time to join me on the podcast today. Like I said, an interesting guy, not the dude who's just going to sit there and say what you expect him to say what you want to hear. He's going to tell you what's on his mind. And, it's cool to talk with him. I want to start interviewing more comics. I want to start talking to more actors. It's been a nice change of pace, to talk to people who maybe aren't making music as much, but they enjoy music just as much as me. And like I, sort of was saying off the top, I want to start embracing my love of other creative things and bringing that into the show and, having more discussions about different things. I mean, I really love creative things, whether it's movies, whether it's photography, whether it's, anything. Architecture, I love creative stuff. I'm not going to be interviewing architects, but it's just there's different avenues that we can take. Follow me on all social media at Cassius Morris. The show is at Cassius Morris _, and make sure to hit that subscribe button as well on YouTube. Numbers are going up. I'm really happy with what we've been seeing on the channel, and I'm just going to keep putting up the content. Look, at the end of the day, you get what you give, and I'm going to keep giving 100%. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for checking in. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris saying, rock on.